So we're going to read 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 12 as we kick our time in the Word off together. You know, brothers and sisters, that our visit to you was not without results. We had previously suffered and been treated outrageously in Philippi, as you know. But with the help of our God, we dared to tell you His gospel in the face of strong opposition. For the appeal we make does not spring from error or impure motives, nor are we trying to trick you. On the contrary, we speak as those approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel. We are not trying to please people, but God, who tests our hearts. You know we never used flattery, nor did we put on a mask to cover up greed. God is our witness. We were not looking for praise from people, not from you or anyone else, even though as apostles of Christ, we could have asserted our authority. Instead, we were like young children among you. Just as a nursing mother cares for her children, so we cared for you, because we loved you so much. We were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. Surely you remember, brother and sisters, our toil and hardship. We worked night and day in order not to be a burden to anyone while we preached the gospel of God to you. You are our witnesses, and so is God, of how holy, righteous, and blameless we were among you who believed. For you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God who calls you into His kingdom and glory. Amen. So keep in mind that as I read this message, the pronoun I refers to Seth, and not in fact I. The heart of a leader, 1 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 12. Good morning. That was from Seth, yeah. So he's listening to your response. Good morning. Today I want to talk about the heart of a leader. John Maxwell, the church leadership guru, says, everything rises and falls on leadership. Whether it's a Fortune 500 company, a sports team, a family, or a church, good leadership is essential to success. One definition of leadership that I like is the ability to influence others. Leadership is the ability to inspire people's hearts and minds to motivate them to do things they never thought possible. I think about Winston Churchill, who led Britain through the darkest days of World War II, inspiring a nation to fight against Nazi Germany. Or Martin Luther King Jr., who, despite fierce opposition, led the American Civil Rights Movement and gave our nation a powerful vision for racial equality. Leadership matters, and godly leadership matters for the church. Right now, the church is in a cultural moment where we desperately need a clear biblical vision for leadership. In the past few decades, the church has faced a crisis due to toxic leadership. A 2025 Gallup poll revealed that only 30% of Americans today trust pastors. That's down from over 60% in the early 2000s. That means that 7 out of 10 people view pastors like me with skepticism. And there's a good reason for that skepticism. The hashtag #MeToo movement gave rise to the hashtag #ChurchToo movement that began exposing stories of abuse, misconduct, and cover-ups in the church. Flip on Netflix or YouTube and you'll find documentaries about fallen pastors and broken trust. It's truly heartbreaking. But here's the hope. In light of the leadership challenges the church faces, 1 Thessalonians 2 gives us a powerful, gospel-centered vision for leadership. Paul shows us what a leader's heart should look like. Not toxic or self-serving, but full of integrity, care, and service. As we seek to raise up leaders in our church, this passage is a helpful blueprint as it reflects Jesus and offers an alternative to the toxic leadership styles that we find all around us. Today, Paul's going to show us the difference between harmful leadership and healthy leadership. So first, harmful leadership. When you read 1Thessalonians chapter 2, it feels like Paul's writing his biography and reminiscing about his time in Thessalonica. But Paul's not trying to wax nostalgic. Instead, he's defending his leadership against accusations that he was trying to take advantage of the church. It seems that people were mistaking Paul for some bad actors, and he's trying to clear the air. Back then, they didn't have Netflix or Hulu for entertainment. Instead, their entertainment often consisted of these traveling philosophers who would ride into town and begin parroting some cool new ideas. Once they had gathered a crowd, they would exploit that crowd for money or worse. It was like ancient clickbait. It's kind of like when I'm scrolling on Facebook. There are advertisements geared for men like me who want to lose their belly fat in 1 week and get shredded. Seth. Even though I know it's a total scam, every now and then I click on the link and realize I got suckered by the clickbait. I hate that feeling. That's how these philosophers operated. They would draw a crowd, they would exploit people, and then they would skip town. You can imagine why they had such a terrible reputation. You can also understand why they thought Paul might be one of these shady characters. Paul showed up in Thessalonica. He preached for 3 weeks. He gathered a following and then skipped town when the persecution came. They probably thought Paul's just another one of those manipulative con artists. So Paul defends himself by highlighting 3 characteristics of harmful leadership that he avoided. First, Paul points to their wrong motives. 1 Thessalonians 2:3 says, "For the appeal we make does not spring from error or impure motives, nor are we trying to trick you." The Greek word here for appeal, paraklesis, means the passionate call of the gospel. And in this context, Paul is referring to the message of Christ's death and resurrection. This is the same gospel that had radically changed Paul's life and now was being preached by Paul everywhere he went. Paul wants them to know that his motive didn't spring from error or false teaching or impurity. He also wasn't trying to trick the Thessalonians. The word here is the word deceit. In the Greek, it implies the idea of baiting a hook. Unlike the fraudulent philosophers who were peddling in lies and deceit, trying to make a buck and gain notoriety, Paul was preaching because his heart had been changed by the gospel. And he preached it out with pure motives to bring others to that truth. Second, then Paul spoke about their wrong methods. 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 5. "You know, we never used flattery, nor did we put on a mask to cover up greed. God is our witness." The Greek word for flattery means to take advantage of someone or get something from them using words. In the Old Testament, it carried the idea of being smooth or slippery. It's like a salesman buttering you up to buy something. I can remember someone being really friendly toward me, only for them to ask if they could get together sometime to share about how I could start my own business and be financially independent. Such a yucky feeling. Paul says their method with the Thessalonians didn't involve flattery or manipulation in order to get their money or something from them, nor did he put on a mask to hide some kind of selfish desire. The sad reality is that often happens in the church. Pastors or leaders can use their flattery or even shame or guilt to motivate people to do things, often because of greedy motives. If you can afford to buy that coffee every day for $5, then you can afford to tithe or help starving children in Africa. That's manipulation, control. That's not leadership. Lastly, Paul exposed their wrong mission. 1Thessalonians 2:6. We were not looking for praise from people, not from you or anyone else. The philosophers' mission was to seek praise and glory for themselves. They wanted to build a brand and make a name for themselves. Paul's mission wasn't to make a name for himself, but to point people to Jesus. Paul didn't need anyone's praise or anyone's approval. He knew how empty and fleeting that was. And he could see the harm that unhealthy leaders inflicted on people due to their need for praise. Harmful leadership wounds. It exploits, it manipulates, and it prioritizes self. So Paul shows a better way, a healthy leadership, a leadership that is gospel-centered and marked by three qualities that reflect Jesus and build up the church. The first mark of healthy leadership that Paul mentions is a heart of integrity. 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 4. On the contrary, we speak as those approved by God, to be entrusted with the gospel. We are not trying to please people, but God, who tests our hearts. The Greek word approved means tested like gold to prove authenticity. Paul's heart had already been tested through years of persecution and suffering. Because of that, he led to please God, not to please people. He knew God tests our hearts or examines our motives. When I was on outreach as a 19-year-old in Mexico, I was assigned the job of cleaning toilets. I hated doing that. Little did I know then how much I needed to be doing that. You see, God was testing my heart. The places of testing are actually the places where God is revealing and refining our integrity. He's refining our hearts as leaders, far away from crowds, far away from applause or approval. When we started our young adult ministry, LAFA, 20 years ago, the leadership that we chose were always the ones who were serving. I can remember one of the former pastors of this church and his wife cleaning the toilets. And if you're leading, ask, am I doing this for God's glory? Or am I doing this for my own glory? If you face trials, let them refine you and your motives to lead like gold being refined in a fire. The second mark of healthy leadership, Paul mentions, is a heart of care. 1 Thessalonians 2, verses 7 through 8. Instead, we were like young children among you. Just as a nursing mother cares for her children, so we cared for you, because we loved you so much. We were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. Paul uses one of the most powerful images of sacrificial love in the human experience, the love of a mother nursing her baby. Paul compares himself to a nursing mother in the way that he, Silas, and Timothy cared for the church. Paul says that leadership looks like a parent tenderly nurturing their child. He said they cared for the Thessalonians because they loved them so much. Paul didn't just preach, he shared his life with them. He ate with the people. He lived with them and he prayed with them. I had a good friend who mentored me through a very difficult season of my life. He would invite me to his home. He would stay up late listening to me. He would share with me. He would pray with me. He was never in a rush. He was gentle and kind. That's the kind of leadership that changes lives. And that's the kind of leadership that Paul displayed when he was with the Thessalonians. The final mark of healthy leadership, Paul mentions, is a heart of sacrifice. 1 Thessalonians 2, verses 9 through 12. Surely you remember, brothers and sisters, our toil and hardship. We worked day and night in order not to be a burden to you or anyone while we were preaching the gospel of God to you. You are witnesses, and so is God, of how holy and righteous and blameless we were among you who believed. For you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God, who calls you into his kingdom and glory. Paul's sacrifice was evident even before Thessalonica. You'll remember, prior to being in Thessalonica, Paul and Silas were in Philippi, where they were publicly flogged, thrown into prison, and had their feet placed in the stocks. Then an earthquake shook that prison, their chains fell off, and the jailer and his family got saved. Then they came to Thessalonica. Their wounds were probably still fresh when they arrived. But Paul's sacrifice went even further. By working as a tent maker, to avoiding burdening the church. And he acted with the Thessalonians just like a father would with their own children, by encouraging them and comforting them and urging them towards godliness. His mission was all about seeing them succeed and grow. It was not about his own gain. I think of a dad coaching his son's basketball team, staying up late to plan practices and cheering them on and correcting them gently. That's Paul's heart, sacrificing to see others grow. I see this in our elders. We have some amazing elders here at Greenmont. Seth speaking. They meet with people after work, before work, praying for them, carrying their burdens, and giving their time and their lives without any desire for attention to care for others. In his book, Platforms to Pillars, Australian pastor Mark Sayers tells the difference between what he calls platform leadership and pillar leadership. Platform leadership is about elevating the leader. You see, platforms are built to be loud and visible. They are usually occupied by influencers, people who use Instagram and YouTube and Facebook for greater visibility and more likes. Our world loves platforms. But pillar leadership, on the other hand, is about supporting the weight of others so that they can flourish. Pillars are quiet and strong. They are steadfast, faithful, and humble. Jesus was a pillar, washing feet, laying down his life for others. And Paul followed in Jesus' path, and so must we. The church is hurting from harmful leadership styles that prioritize selfish motives, manipulative methods, and misguided missions. But Paul shows us the heart of a leader is one of service and integrity, one that has a desire to please God above all else, with a caring and sacrificial heart, just like a father. This is the leadership that reflects Jesus and makes the church a place of healing and hope. Father, thank you for Paul's example and Jesus' perfect leadership. Lord, would you heal us from wounds that are caused by harmful leaders? Would you shape us into pillar leaders with hearts of integrity, care, and sacrifice? And may our church reflect your beauty as we lead in love like you.